Hello, world. Let's get a build started. You can read the title, but if you can, today I'm building the Yellow Armor. I'll also be doing the Blue Thrower from the Victory Robo or Lightspeed Megazord Super Minipla set. Yellow Armor. Yeah. So, I believe this was... what's this? America has Rescue 4? Something like that. It's a box, like any other box. Yep, it's a different box from any you've ever seen. That's a lie. It's the same box. Ever to tell people that I'm streaming? I might not have. So the pink Aider from yesterday is like entirely white. There's no pink. The pink stickers are only like there. The rest of the pink is just pre-applied paint on the side. I mean, it makes sense because it's an ambulance, but still, deceptively named. Like there was a long tradition of not giving the Pink Ranger a pink mecha that finally got broken in like 2013, I think. Was the first time that we had an unabashedly pink Zord. So yeah, Yellow's never gotten the short end of the shaft, probably because Yellow is a dude half the time, like in this show. They changed him to a woman in Power Rangers, but in Japan, Yellow was a dude. If you're ever curious, the rule of thumb for that is if they didn't have a skirt, they're a dude, except for the seasons where nobody had skirts, where it was, let's see, not Jack did, Battle Fever, and Deca Ranger, I believe, are the only two where the women do not wear skirts with their Ranger outfits. So yeah. Anyway. Yellow Armor. It's gonna be basically the same build as Pink Aider. Some small differences. Got my delicious candy, goes in my stash. I'll eat them all when I collect them all. That goes there too, because that's from Grand Liner. I don't actually know if that specific one is from Grand Liner. I don't keep that close of a track, but one of the four now is from the Grand Liner set. Yeah, you can really see the parts layout is basically the same as Pink Aider was. Two of those. Where'd those go in here? Sides. That makes sense. That's the wheel mount. Extra hands for the robot. Backs of hands. And then tires. Hubcaps. My mortal enemy. That's the base of the foot. That's the claw thing. And then some other parts I can't quite identify yet. I guess that's the joints. The sides. Toe, basically. Yeah. Pretty straightforward. And a dozen stickers. Alright, first things first, we will pull the toe piece off the sprue. Leave these for the next step. B5, 4, and 7. What is this piece? I don't recognize this from the other build. How's everybody's Friday? He says to an audience of nobody. Forgot P7. That is very smooth. I'm impressed. It's okay to garnish this piece up a little bit because it's going to be internal. As long as it ever gets seen. Try to avoid it, but if it gets scratched up, it's, you know, not... It's superficial. Superficial? I don't know. Underneath. I'm a bit sleepy. I didn't clean this one off yet. There's stickers that go on here, but I'll get to those later. What is it telling me about this piece? The big hole goes on the right. Makes sense. Oh, I see. Okay. We have a toe. I will sticker that at the end. That's some nice detailing. So that's supposed to be... Hopefully that silver's supposed to be there. Seems like a paint bleed. Paint splatter. I guess I would listen to music, wouldn't I? Let's put on some music. Or just random YouTube, I don't know. I'll figure it out. Figuring it out as I go along. The decline of Steak and Shake. What? I used to work at Steak and Shake, so I'm very curious to hear this one. Let's get that up as a source. I never noticed he's got a nice thump under there.
Steak and Shake is pretty self-explanatory. They have an old-fashioned diner-type setting and are famous for their steak burgers and milkshakes. I have a lot of rises and falls to talk about. They have been declining over the past few years, but there's still over 500 of them, mainly in the Midwest, but they can be found all throughout the eastern part of the country. Now, this company has been around for something like 90 years now, and over that time, it has had so many different owners and managers, each of which have made their own significant changes. I mean, this place technically started as a gas station, so if you've been there sometime over that 90-year span, your experience is highly dependent on which year or decade you were there. Because of this, I think it'll be effective to go through the different owners and highlight some of the major impacts that they've made, starting with the founder, Gus Belt. Steak and Shake was started by Gus Belt and his wife Edith, though it wasn't their original intention. See, Gus was involved in the automotive industry, and by the early 1930s, he and his wife had become the owners of a gas station in the town of Normal, Illinois. It wasn't the biggest town, it had fewer than 7,000 people at the time, and this was near the height of the Great Depression, so they were looking for different ways to make additional money and attract customers. Their big idea was to essentially open a restaurant inside of that gas station. That's when it became a real husband and wife team. Gus was more focused on the automotive part, and then Edith would be more in charge of the restaurant. Originally, it was all-you-can-eat chicken, french fries, and coleslaw for 45 cents, and then for a little extra you can also buy beer. I get the sense that the beer became a major part of it, because it wasn't long before a nearby college started protesting it. To avoid issues there, and I suspect they felt it was a more promising direction anyway, they took out a small loan and used the money to renovate things. I would definitely consider this right here to be their biggest change to date, because it's where they found their identity. They dropped the gas station and the chicken and reopened in early 1934 as a more traditional burger stand called Steak and Shake. But they still stood out from the competition because, as the name reflects, their burgers were made out of steak. In fact, this is weird, but their slogan early on was, "In sight, it must be right," because Gus Belt himself would famously come up in front of the customers and grind up all the steaks into patties. Not exactly something that I would care to see, but I suppose it was a cool gimmick and it helped promote the quality of their ingredients. They did place a huge emphasis on quality, along with cleanliness, two things that were not commonly emphasized among their competitors at the time, which helped make the whole transition successful. That restaurant became one of the most popular in their area. In the days before drive-thrus were popular, they added their once famous curbside service as a way to serve more customers, because there were simply more people wanting to eat their food than the tables could accommodate. Since they knew that the concept worked and had accumulated some profits, they started opening more Steak and Shakes. First in the nearby town of Bloomington, Illinois, and by the end of the 1930s, they owned and operated 8 of them across various parts of Illinois. Over the next 15 years, they just continued growing, making their way into Missouri, Arkansas, Florida, and by 1954, there were 24 of them located throughout the Midwest and southeastern parts of the United States. This is where the first change in ownership happens, though I have to admit it's probably the least significant. When Gus Belt was 59 years old, he had a heart attack and died. When it happened, the full ownership of Steak and Shake was transferred to none other than Edith Belt. Considering the two had started it together and had always been on the same page as far as how to run the business, not much was different. The most I would have to say about this is over the next 15 years of her leadership, the number of locations more than doubled to 50, and that's about it. Then in 1969, after 35 years of being under the control of the Belt family, Steak and Shake in their 50 locations was sold to Longchamps, which was a company known for their chain of steakhouses. Again, this wasn't one of the bigger changes. It looks like they may have become too profit-focused, in my opinion. They raised a few of the prices while cutting a few corners as far as the ingredients as a way to reduce their costs. Probably not a great direction to take things, but I say it was mostly insignificant because 2 years later, they sold it. The buyer there this time was a company called Franklin Corporation, who seems to have quickly reversed most of the previous changes, but their time of ownership will be mostly remembered from their mission to rapidly expand the company's reach. Do you remember how Edith Belt was responsible for more than doubling their locations in a 15-year span? Well, Franklin more than doubled it again to 130 locations, this time within a span of 4 years. Also, it was during this time when the drive-thrus became the new industry standard, and that motivated them to mostly discontinue their curbside service. Then in 1981, 10 years after purchasing it, Franklin Corporation sold the company to this man named Ed Kelly, who then formed a parent company under which it operated called Consolidated Products, but in the year 2000, the name of everything was simply changed to the Steak and Shake Company. Before this, Ed Kelly had experience mostly with consumer food products, stuff that you'd mainly see in a grocery store, but his period of ownership is generally considered to be the most significant. Steak and Shake themselves considered him to be the modern-day founder of the company, likely because during this time they grew from 130 restaurants to almost 500, and it's where they re-established their old identity. That seems to be the case with Steak and Shake. They first found success in such a different time, and it just doesn't seem to work whenever they try to update things. Through parts of the 1980s, when Steak and Shake had some tough times, Kelly and his managers looked at things and said, we need to get back to basics. So they did everything they could to reverse any changes from the past 50 years and reinstated that black and white tile look complemented by the shiny metal everywhere. I think that the feeling of all that best complements their model, and I suppose at this point, being 50 years later, it had a classic retro look to it, which I suppose made things even more appealing. It turned out to be effective, so they responded to the increased demand by opening new locations throughout the next 20 or so years and famously extended their hours to 24 hours a day. It wasn't until 2006 when things started to go bad again. This is where we're going to get into it. Looking at their revenue, you might say that 2008 is when things went bad, and I would agree, that's when things went really bad. Their sales dropped by over 40 million despite opening 7 new locations. But the rising sales before that are related to having more locations. So to take out some variables, I'm going to focus more on the changes in same-store sales. It's an average of how each restaurant performed in relation to a comparable one the year before. For this, 2006 is when it went negative, and I'm going to say is the start of their real troubles. When trying to find reasons behind it, there's a lot of different theories. The company themselves blamed outside factors like harsh winters and rising gas prices over that time. They are mostly in the Midwest, so weather can be a factor, but I don't know, probably not to this degree. Another thing to consider is Ed Kelly actually died in 2003. The argument could be made that his absence could have something to do with it. Many believe that an increase in prices around that time could have turned away a lot of customers. Whatever the reason is, people stopped going to Steak and Shake, and that was an issue. But they did recover from it, which leads me to their final change in ownership. In 2008, this guy named Big Laurie and his company Big Laurie Holdings took control of it, and just let me show you the numbers. When looking at same-store sales again, and most of the numbers reflect something similar, almost as soon as they took control, everything got better, and then things kept getting worse and worse again. I'll admit, it's hard to assign perfect reasoning behind this, but here's what I think is the best explanation, and things do start to come together. Big Laurie has said that he truly believes in using a version of the Henry Ford model. He wants to sell decent enough food at a low price, and the thing that allows him to do that is efficiency. They try to get those steak burgers and shakes out fast, at a minimal cost, and because they're selling so many of them, they can afford to sell them for cheap and make only a small profit off of each one.
Our goal for milkshakes was 2 minutes from the time the order is placed to the time it's in the window to serve. It was honestly not super unattainable, super undoable, especially once you know once you got good at it. So, but when the rush hit, it was pretty brutal during lunch rush.
It's a high quantity, low margin type of business, and when he took over the company, that's exactly what he implemented. To improve efficiency, he cut down on the menu items. Their menu was 8 pages when he got there, and he reduced it to 2. He discovered that burgers, fries, soda, and shakes made up 80% of their sales, so he placed almost their entire emphasis on those. He also cut prices and forced all of the restaurants to have uniform pricing and menus. Almost all of his changes were designed to sell more food and quickly serve more customers. customers. Some of these changes were not popular among franchisees and other people involved, but we can't deny that they were effective. I suspect that the statement might be a little exaggerated, but Big Larry said that in 2008, when he took over, Steak and Shake was at the very edge of bankruptcy, with $1.6 million in cash, $27 million in debt, and was losing about $100,000 per day in cash. But then, from 2009 to 2015, every year, Steak and Shake saw an increase in sales, an increase in their number of customers served, positive operating results, and positive same-store sales. Now we have to look at the other end of this. Those are all numbers that have moved in the wrong direction in 2016 and have continued getting worse. The explanation provided by Big Laurie here is that they were relying on outdated kitchen equipment and restaurant layouts, which I know sounds like a lame excuse at first, but I believe it could be a big part of it. See, Big Laurie Holdings is actually a company that owns a bunch of different things. In addition to Steak and Shake, they own another restaurant called Western Sizzlin', an insurance company called First Guard, an oil company called Southern Oil, and a magazine called Maxim. But up until recently, Steak and Shake was at the core. They were performing far better than those other businesses, and I suspect subsidizing them. Simply put, the money that they were making from Steak and Shake was not put towards Steak and Shake. It was put toward all of this other nonsense. So that would explain why they were using outdated equipment. I'm just saying, maybe it'd be smart to reinvest in their big moneymaker rather than paying $50 million for an unrelated oil company. For Steak and Shake, it's like they fixed it and then ignored it. And just think of how their specific model can be impacted by something like outdated equipment. Among other things, they say it's caused higher labor costs, 6 to 8% higher than the rest of the industry, and longer wait time.
Company man, hoy.
Hoy, yes. I like Company Man. Also, this episode stuck out of me because I used to work at a Steak and Shake, so I was like, there's the rise and fall of Steak and Shake. So I'm like, I gotta hear about this. You may have missed some of my commentary along the way, but I worked there from mid 2013 to mid 2014, and he talked about their goal is efficiency. And I was like, I can attest to that because our goal for milkshakes was 2 minutes from the time the order shows up to the time it's done. It's on the counter ready to be taken out to the customer. And this one milkshake, not bad. 4 milkshakes, not bad. But when you got a couple dozen showing up on your screen during a lunch rush.
Zombie Esther. Aaron's into that channel. Never really been to a Steak and Shake. I don't think they're up here.
F. I mean, they're fine. You should try one once. I can speak for the milkshakes. They're very good. The food's good too. I never learned grill or fry station or anything else besides fountain and dishwasher. But the food was good.
Sailor Zombie Esther. Yeah, that shake situation sounds like it sucks.
There were days I hated it, I'll be honest, but a lot of the time, usually there was enough people during rushes to hold down the fort at least. There'd be 2 people on the Saturday nights were terrible, but there'd be 2 people on fountain and 1 person, actually 3 people assigned to fountain, and no. Sorry, 2 assigned to fountain. One would be dedicated fountain, and one would go back and forth from washing dishes, and come back up if there was a need. So we managed. There were definitely times that I wanted to throw my apron on the floor and walk out, but I never did. Although I will say the deciding incident for me, besides the fact that I got a job offer, was the day, it actually wasn't the day that the milk bag roughed it over me, surprisingly, but no, it was the day that I was called in to unload the truck and stock overnight, having never done this because the normal guy called out, or was over hours or something, and so I didn't really know where shit went, because I only knew where my shit went. And so I was there way later than I was supposed to be, and I had a shift the following morning, So I was basically running into my own shift. And my manager came and he's like, what are you still doing here? He's like, I didn't like this manager, but he helped me put stuff away, and he sent me home, and he found a replacement for my shift that day. And I was thankful to him for that. But that was the day I decided to quit that restaurant for good. So that's my story. See, these milkshake machines, mine were not like that. Not all in a row. That's not my fountain station at all. I had two machines with 3 blenders each, rather.
Sailor Zombie Esther. Understandable.
So my setup, I guess the bay is about the same, but the row of mixers is not how mine was. So I had 2 blenders on either side of the counter, one on either side of the counter, that had 3 mixers each. Jesus Christ. And so 6 total. They did not all ever work at one time. There's at least one dead on both sides usually. So, max out 4 mixers. There's like 20, 30 cups down in the basin to use for mixing. Half of them are vanilla, half of them are reserved for the other flavors. Because, half the milkshakes have vanilla base. And then directly in front of me would have been the syrups for the flavors.
Amara_wolf. Scree.
Yeah, I'm going to be screaming at 6:30. Oh, it's 7 o'clock already. You mind if I... Thank you for coming to my scream. Anyway, like I said, directly in front, as you can see...
Amara_wolf. Ah yes, this is the quality content I subscribed for.
You subscribed to me? Why? So up there, like I said, in this configuration, you've got all the syrups up top. We pump your flavors in. Mine would be just like... Were they out to the, they were... Were they out to the sides? I think they were... I don't remember. I think most of them were in front, and then behind that was the row of...
Beautiful scree.
Behind them was the row of mix-ins and toppings. And so I don't know where the mix-ins and toppings are in this... Actually, I think they're over there on the left. That looks right. Looks left. I don't know. You know what I mean. This would have been a nice layout, I'm not going to lie. They got 7 mixers at least in sight, possibly 8. So that's more than I ever had. They're all in a row, which could be good or bad. I don't know. So, I don't miss... I don't miss the... I don't know. I enjoyed what I did when it was calm. Which, it's a restaurant, so it's never calm. I don't miss it.
Sailor Zombie Esther. My friend is so happy to be here, she's deep cleaned my house and is now mowing the lawn. I just wanted to make dolls with her. Send help.
I think your friend is moving in with you. I don't know what to do about that.
Explain why they were using outdated equipment. I'm just saying, maybe it'd be smart to reinvest in their big moneymaker rather than paying $50 million for an unrelated oil company. For Steak and Shake, it's like they fixed it and then ignored it. And just think of how their specific model can be impacted by something like outdated equipment. Among other things, they say it's caused higher labor costs, 6 to 8% higher than the rest of the industry, and longer wait times, which makes customers unhappy. And when your goal is to serve as many customers as possible, it's not a good idea to make them wait. So that's the explanation that comes from the company, and I believe it makes sense.
LOL,
In
we've
their
offered
words,
her that
we
option.
failed customers by
She
not
likes her
being
independence
fast and
too
friendly.
much.
Another thing is Big Laurie took over right when the recession was...
That you've got a civil servant? I don't know. You got a housekeeper.
was becoming a factor, a time when you would expect that simple, low-price strategy to be especially effective. Maybe we can it's not a good idea to make them wait. So that's the explanation that comes from the company, and I believe it makes sense. In their words, we failed customers by not being fast and friendly. Another thing is Big Laurie took over right when the recession was becoming a factor, a time when you would expect
Sailor
that simple,
Zombie Esther.
low-price strategy
I've got a hell of a good friend, I think.
It sounds like it.
to be especially effective. Maybe we can theorize that as the economy recovered, it became less and less attractive. Just something else to consider, but on the upside, they're
By the way,
acknowledging the issue.
Y'all saw I found that that hubcap. I don't remember which side I put it on, but it's one of those four. Actually, one of these two to be technical. So yeah, I'm happier. And it was in the fucking box. Like it fell in here somewhere.
Sailor Zombie Esther. Yes, congrats.
I don't know, man. I don't know.
They temporarily shut down about 100 of their almost
Sailor
600
Zombie
locations
Esther.
to update the
Glad to hear it.
Actually, yeah, I think I saw when they updated them. Like I left Steak and Shake in 2014. But the one near me that I worked at, I definitely, like, it was closed for a bit, and they've renovated it a bit inside as well. A little bit inside, mostly equipment, I guess. They reduced their operating hours, too. They're not 24 hours anymore, which is sad, because I like going there in the middle of the night. But
equipment and remodel them to force people to the counters rather than the tables. Again, a faster and more efficient way of doing things. However, the pandemic has complicated things. It turns out about half of those temporary closures are now permanent.
Oof.
They're switching to more of a franchising model as opposed to company-owned, which makes sense to me for a company that doesn't seem to want to be too involved. There's more Steak and Shake franchises over the past few years than ever before. Let me know in the comments, why does Steak and Shake seem to be so unstable? It seems like every 10 to 15 years there's major issues requiring new owners, new management, big changes. What keeps going wrong? Is there something about an old-fashioned milkshake and hamburger stand that just has a hard time withstanding the test of time? And do you agree with my reasoning behind
Sailor
everything?
Zombie
It's
Esther.
a tricky subject, so
There's
is there
something
anything
very
major
alien
that I
yet
failed to
comforting about
mention?
24
Also,
hours
what do
places
you
at
think
like
of the
2:30
restaurants
a.m.
themselves?
I agree.
I've heard a lot of mixed reviews, but based on the numbers, I would guess that most of you have noticed a decline starting around 2016. And any other thoughts you have about Steak and Shake, leave them in the comments. I'd like to hear what you have to say. Thank you for watching.
I can probably go full ham with these hubcaps, because only the exterior is going to be seen. And if they need to be small to allow free spinning wheels, then they shall be.
Thanks to CuriosityStream for keeping Legal Eagle in the air. Get 26% off CuriosityStream and Nebula using the link in the description. Everyone knows police can't lie to you. False. If you ask a lawyer a legal question, the answer is usually, it depends. Because it usually depends. Law is a vast and complex thing, so it won't surprise any of you that there are many misconceptions about what is and is not illegal. The law is complicated, and it's easy to get confused if you have no legal experience. But the fun thing about law is that people tend to believe that there are certain hard and fast rules that are, unfortunately, definitely wrong. So let's dispel some myths and correct some misconceptions. And be honest, did you believe any of these things? Like,
I'll let you know.
Everybody knows it's illegal to marry your cousin.
Sailor Zombie Esther.
False. You
Have you seen his one on 90 Day Fiancé?
I think I did. I think most of his, like, I don't know, I've seen a lot of his videos. I like this guy. Legal Eagle's a good channel.
can marry your cousin, provided it's your first cousin and you live in one of the 21 American states that allow it. Cousin marriage has always been popular around the world. Gross. It was considered a relatively good bet for a long-lasting union. Think of all the family that you already already shared. But things started to change in America in the mid-1800s when states decided that cousins marrying cousins was a bad idea. And interestingly enough, cousin marriages weren't ever outlawed in England, and they are still allowed in Canada, largely because the practice was associated with the aristocracy. In America, the situation was largely the opposite. Cousin marriage was viewed negatively in part because it was practiced by people who didn't have lots of money. But let's get down to brass tacks. First cousin marriage is legal in Alabama, Alaska, California, Colorado, Connecticut, the District of Columbia, Florida, because, of course, Georgia, Hawaii, Maryland, Massachusetts, New Jersey, New Mexico, New York, and North Carolina. In several other states, it's allowed with some restrictions. These states include Arizona, Illinois, Indiana, Utah, and Wisconsin, where first cousin marriage is allowed if the parties are above a certain age or one is unable to produce. Maine also permits it if a couple obtains a physician's certificate of genetic counseling. Though, note, if you do go through with it, Susan Collins may express her displeasure and furrow an eyebrow, but then allow you to do it anyway.
This is disgraceful.
But I guess this sort of myth is actually true in certain states. If you live in Arkansas, Delaware, Idaho, Iowa, Kansas, Kentucky, hey, Kentucky, way to go. Louisiana, Michigan, Minnesota, Mississippi, Missouri, Montana, Nebraska, Nevada, New Hampshire, North Dakota, Ohio, Oklahoma, Oregon, Pennsylvania, South Dakota, Washington, West Virginia, or Wyoming, you'll have to look outside of the family reunion to find a spouse. Which brings us to the next myth, the reading of the will. Because everyone knows when...
So I'll admit, I knew it was legal in some places. I didn't realize it was quite so widespread. That's interesting to me. Because, you know, it's kind of like this big taboo, culturally speaking. Didn't know it was legal in Georgia. Anybody watching this who doesn't know I live in Georgia? I don't think anybody watches this that doesn't know who I am. Amara, do you know who I am? Is Amara still watching? I don't know.
Someone dies, you gather in a big ornate room, and then you wait silently until the executor reads your portion of the will and hopefully explaining that your estranged uncle left you millions of dollars, or if you were expecting millions of dollars, surprise, you get nothing, or you're left with just a haunted mansion. This is false. I'm willing to bet that no one who was watching this video has ever been summoned to a lawyer's office for the reading of a loved one's will.
Sailor Zombie Esther.
Many people still believe that when
Only
someone
Zeal
passes
is
away,
watching.
there will be a family gathering where a lawyer officially breaks the news about who will inherit money and assets. This is one of the most reliable plot lines for a daytime and nighttime soap opera.
I'm left with 40%. They are the major shareholders. How did Daddy do this to me?
The big event always takes place in the lawyer's office or old-timey library, and it involves the whole crazy family all in one room together. It's led by a well-dressed lawyer wearing Indochino, presumably, who gets to do the big reveal. Now, you can't blame
J_DHA_shade.
screenwriters for wanting a reading of the will to be a real
How's
thing.
the build
It's
going?
a great way to create
It's
dramatic
going.
tension, and there's a lot riding on this dead person's estate.
You know, it's basically the same as the Pink Aider. Like I said that up front, but nobody was here to hear me say it. It's basically going to be the same construction as this little ambulance with like some minor structural differences. Blue thrower is going to be the big one. But, you know, it's just build the outside panel, build the inside panels, build the foot. Pretty straightforward.
Date.
I'm leaving you my keyboard. I'm going to keep it in my room at the Q Mansion. Please give it to Leo.
Will someone walk away rich? Will someone be disinherited? Will someone
J_DHA_shade.
unexpected show up? Will there be a fight?
How was the whole set?
I don't know. This is only the third one I've done. I built Red Ladder, and I have built Pink Aider, and now I'm building Yellow Armor. Red Ladder was fun, except for the 2 days where I lost one of the wheel spokes. Pink Aider was straightforward, simple build. This one should be, like I said, should be the same. Most of the time is just spent cleaning up the pieces. There's been Grand Liner was a very tough build. Like I mean, I don't know, like not hard to put it together, but just like it took a lot more time than I expected. It's like, oh, it's got big pieces, it'll be pretty easy. No, it took me like 2 days. Oh, it's just like, I meant to start this on Monday. I started on Tuesday instead, then skipped Wednesday, so I'll be doing 2 pieces tonight to catch up. I'll be doing... So I'll finish this up on, tomorrow. I've got Leopardon in now, so I'll probably build that. Maybe build that on Sunday, I don't know. And then, is it, Max Liner, Victory... Let's see, the combine is Max Victory Robo. Liner Boy. There we go. Will be coming in like 2 weeks or so. Comes in stock on the 16th? Is what they told me. And then should be shipping like... Since I already went ahead and took care of my shipping, it should ship soon. So that's my schedule. And then I'll be done building stuff for a little bit. Until we find out what Kira Major Set 5 is. Well, I know what it is, but until we actually get it in hand. So yeah, but it's been a fun set so far.
But here's the thing. There is no legal requirement that a last will and testament be read aloud to family members or anyone else for that matter. All beneficiaries named in the will are entitled to receive a copy so they can understand what they'll be receiving from the estate and when those assets will be distributed.
J_DHA_shape.
Usher everyone.
I meant how much was the
Oh.
whole Go-Go Machine set?
How much money? It was like $60 after, I guess, after taxes, and then like another. Cause like I shipped it. Well, Victory Robo itself was 60. Then Grand Liner was 130. Just pure just cost. Then shipping was a bitch because I could only get it through FedEx basically, or UPS or whatever, because Japan Post ain't shipping, so it cost me about a lot of money to ship. I don't remember how much anymore, but because I made my initial payment, which included shipping. Then they're like, yeah, we need to change your shipping, so here it'll be like $60 extra for this. I'm like, damn it, fuck. So I don't know. Altogether, including shipping, I'd estimate I paid, I don't know, $250, $300. For like all of these. And then Liner Boy will bump that up more. I actually don't want to think about it. It's too much. It's too damn much. I want Japan Post to come back, so I can get my stuff shipped via like SAL shipping. I don't mind waiting a few weeks. Saves me money. Oh right, I forgot the spokes. It's important.
Into a room where the contents of the will be revealed. In fact, lawyers would prefer not to do it this way, since we aren't trained to break up fights like a bouncer at scores. Lawyers prefer to fight with our words, not our fists, and wound you with a pen rather than a sword. So, if there's no requirement for wills to be read out loud, where did this idea come from? Well, 100 years ago, estate attorneys did gather the family together to read the will, because not everyone could actually read the will on their own. Nowadays, we sort of assume that the beneficiaries of a will are actually literate. But the main conflict in movies and TV shows involving wills is whether someone will be disinherited, and this is definitely a source of conflict in the real world. And since most states usually have a very strict time frame for contesting a will, it can be to everyone's advantage to start the clock by notifying disinherited heirs earlier rather than later. This is actually what happened when President Trump's father died, because it's 2020 and everything involves Donald Trump these days. Donald Trump's father, amended his will to disinherit Mary Trump and Fred Trump III, the descendants of Fred Trump Jr., who died when he was 46. Mary and Fred were cut out of a 20% share of their grandfather's estate that they might have received had their father lived. The other Fred Trump grandchildren are in line to inherit their parents' full shares in Fred Trump's estate. Now, the Trump children, including Donald, told tax authorities that Dad's properties were worth around
J_DHA_shade. What the heck is that show?
This is Legal Eagle, a YouTuber.
The New York Times reported that the true value was closer to $1 billion, which obviously is a lot of money to be disinherited from. Fred III and Mary filed a will contest 9 months later. Which brings us to the next legal misconception, because everyone knows if you go into a casino and you start counting cards, you can be arrested because counting cards is illegal.
It's not illegal. They just don't want you to. Cheating is bad for their business.
False. Counting cards while playing blackjack, though widely considered to be illegal, is not. Really, you're just playing the game that the casino is offering at a much higher level than they were expecting. There is no local, state, or federal law that makes counting cards against the law. Generally, the way it works in blackjack is that it's more favorable for the player when there are more aces and cards that are valued at 10, the 10s, jacks, queens, and kings, remaining in the shoe. So card counting is simply using a system to keep track of the ratio of low cards to high cards. And if you have a halfway decent memory, you can teach yourself to do this by tracking the changing imbalance of big and small cards in a diminishing deck. And since you're just using your brain, this is perfectly fine. There's even a court case making it legal, at least in New Jersey, because everything is legal in New Jersey. The New Jersey
Thank you,
Supreme
Hamilton.
Court has ruled that players cannot be discriminated against based on their playing skills, even if they are caught counting cards. Counting cards does not violate the New Jersey Casino Control Act. However, counting cards becomes problematic if you're using a device to count cards, or you have friends who are tipping you off. Though if you're playing in Nevada, the rules are a bit different. There's no Nevada law against counting cards, but the casinos also have free reign to remove people as they see fit. Casinos are private property. They can remove just about anyone for any reason. So if you're caught counting cards in Vegas, even with your brain, you can expect the pit boss to pull you aside and prohibit you from playing blackjack. Which takes us to the next legal misconception, because everybody knows that you have to wait 24 hours to
I guess it depends. Yeah, I didn't think this one. I never really thought about it, but it depends on the circumstance, I guess.
Person. Even if you know that your loved one is missing, you were there when the dark van pulled up beside your loved one. The sliding door opened, and some henchmen who were wearing black shirts that said henchmen grabbed your loved one and threw him in the van and drove off. And then, of course, you go to the local chief of police, who, of course, you trust because he's been a long-time family friend, and you confide and say that you saw them abduct your loved one. And he says, "Look, I'm sorry, I believe you, but I can't do anything about it because you have to wait 24 hours before you can report a missing person." And it sounds reasonable.
Sounds like a law that actually exists, but of course, your longtime family friend has been in on the conspiracy from the very beginning. So obviously then you have to take the law into your own hands because you waited 24 hours to report a missing person.
But that is false. A lot of people think that if a person is missing, you have to wait 24 hours to report it to the authorities. But in reality, there is no state or federal law requiring police departments to wait 24 hours before investigating a missing persons case. In fact, in 1990, the Crime Control Act became law, which mandated that all law enforcement agencies immediately report a missing child under the age of 18 to the National Crime Information Center at the Department of Justice. And in 2003, President George W. Bush signed the PROTECT Act, which included Suzanne's Law, raising the age to 21. So anyone under that age could be reported to the national database immediately. Suzanne Lyall was a 19-year-old college student who disappeared in 1998, and when Lyall's disappearance was reported to campus police, officers told her parents that brief absences were not uncommon for college students. So they shouldn't worry, since she would probably turn up. She was unfortunately never seen again. And as Suzanne's case demonstrates, there is some truth to the myth that for missing adults, police departments once had waiting periods before they would take a missing person's report. The common belief was that most people who seemed to be missing actually returned fairly quickly. Today, most law enforcement agencies have reversed course even for adults. This is partly because in the age of the cell phone, most people are reachable relatively quickly, and if they don't respond, something is likely to be wrong. But to sum it up, when an adult or child goes missing, it should be immediately reported. And under Suzanne's Law, federal, state, and local law enforcement must report all missing persons up to the age of 21 to the DOJ without delay, and the police are obligated to investigate right away. Which takes us to the next legal misconception, which is that if you are accused of a crime, everyone knows that you can't be convicted on circumstantial evidence alone, because everyone knows circumstantial evidence is weak and can't lead to a conviction. False. Criminal defendants often tell their lawyers, all the prosecutors have on me is circumstantial evidence, and you can't convict on circumstantial evidence alone. But the mistake people make about criminal law, and frankly civil law for that matter, is that circumstantial evidence is not enough to convict. But there's no law saying that, and in fact the law says the absolute opposite. The standard of proof in criminal trials is beyond a reasonable doubt, and that means that the prosecution must prove that the defendant is guilty of a crime charged to the extent that no reasonable person could have a reasonable doubt that the defendant is guilty. And the prosecution can prove guilt beyond a reasonable doubt by building a case through direct evidence, circumstantial evidence, or a combination of both. Direct evidence directly shows the defendant's guilt, requiring no inference whatsoever. Direct evidence would be a video showing someone is killing the victim, or a witness testifying that they saw the person murdering that victim. Circumstantial evidence, on the example, there was no direct evidence that infamous Casey Anthony killed her daughter Kaylee, but the prosecution thought they had strong circumstantial evidence. Their theory was that Casey used chloroform to suffocate her child. However, the child's body was so badly decomposed that there was no definitive determination.
Sailor Zombie Esther. Back I guess whatever.
Did I like actually stop streaming, or did my camera just go out? Because I saw that I noticed my camera was out, but
Sailor Zombie Esther. It crashed for a bit.
how long's a bit?
Sailor Zombie Esther. It said an error occurred, please check back.
It's me. I'm the error. I occurred.
Sailor Zombie Esther. Maybe 2 to 3 minutes.
Alright. Well, let's go back, just cause.
Alone, because everyone knows circumstantial evidence is weak and can't lead to a conviction. False. Criminal defendants often tell their lawyers, all the prosecutors have on me is circumstantial evidence, and you can't convict on circumstantial evidence alone. But the number one mistake people make about criminal law, and frankly civil law for that matter, is that circumstantial evidence is not enough to convict. But there's no law saying that, and in fact the law says the absolute opposite. The standard of proof in criminal trials is beyond a reasonable doubt, and that means that the prosecution must prove that the defendant is guilty of a crime charged to the extent that no reasonable person could have a reasonable doubt that the defendant is guilty. And the prosecution can prove guilt beyond a reasonable doubt by building a case through direct evidence, circumstantial evidence, or a combination of both. Direct evidence directly shows the defendant's guilt, requiring no inference whatsoever. Direct evidence would be a video showing someone is killing the victim, or a witness testifying that they saw the person murdering that victim. Circumstantial evidence, on the other hand, is indirect evidence that may lead to the inference that the defendant committed a crime, even though there's no direct proof. The key word here is inference, since circumstantial evidence allows jurors to infer facts that the prosecutors don't have direct evidence to prove. But circumstantial evidence can be extremely strong. Even DNA evidence, considered some of the strongest evidence out there, is circumstantial. For example, if a criminal defendant had traces of the victim's blood in their apartment, then you might make the inference that that person was in fact the killer, though it's possible that that blood could have gotten there under other circumstances. So that might be extremely strong evidence, but there might be an explanation for it. That's circumstantial evidence. Of course, not all circumstantial evidence is created equal. Some is stronger and weaker than others, and this is where jury discretion comes in. It's up to the individual jurors to weigh the importance of each piece of evidence and then decide together whether the prosecution has proven its case. For example, there was no direct evidence that infamous Casey Anthony killed her daughter Kaylee, but the prosecution thought they had strong circumstantial evidence. Their theory was that Casey used chloroform to suffocate her child. However, the child's body was so badly decomposed that there was no definitive determination of the cause of death. The prosecution had evidence that someone in Anthony's household had done internet searches for information on chloroform, and traces of chloroform were found in the trunk of Anthony's car. And the prosecution hoped that the jury would draw an inference that the internet search and chloroform traces, along with the fact that Anthony didn't report her child was missing for a month, prove that she killed her child. And of course, a lot of people believed that as well. However, the jury did not think that that was enough to prove that Casey Anthony killed her daughter beyond a reasonable doubt. If the same case was tried to 10 different juries, it'd be interesting to know how many of them would have drawn the same conclusion. But that's not how our system works. You can be convicted or found not guilty based on circumstantial evidence alone. But that brings us to the next legal misconception, which is that everybody knows that if you're doing something illegal and you think you might be interacting with an undercover cop, you should ask them if they are a police officer, because everyone knows police can't lie to you.
They didn't think that
False.
one.
Our final misconception is that police cannot lie to you during an interrogation. Actually, they absolutely can use deception. There's actually a Supreme Court case on it. In Frazier versus Cupp, the Supreme Court affirmed the legality of deceptive interrogation tactics. Police in that case got a tip that Martin Frazier, a 20-year-old U.S. Marine, might be involved in the murder of Russell Anton Marley.
Sailor
Frazier,
Zombie
along with
Esther.
his cousin, Jerry Lee
You know
Rawls,
what Anthony got off? Because the investigation team checked Internet Explorer's history and not Firefox. Firefox history had such gems as how to kill a child quick/painless and dose a child Xanax.
Jesus.
Sailor Zombie Esther. I hate her.
You should. She's not exactly someone to look up to. I've set it slipping. That's a very bad place for that peg to be. Whatever.
seen in a bar with the victim before the murder. During the interrogation, the police falsely informed Frazier that Rawls had already confessed and implicated him in the murder. Frazier denied any involvement in the crime and suggested speaking with an attorney, but police continued to question him. Police got Frazier to confess. This confession was used against him at trial, and he was convicted of murder. Rawls also pleaded guilty to the same offense. The Supreme Court rejected Frazier's appeal, stating that although police misrepresented Rawls' testimony, that did not make the confession inadmissible, and later case law has interpreted this as allowing deception during interrogations. This includes lying about evidence, like fingerprints or DNA. However, there are some limits. Police, for example, can't misrepresent a person's basic legal rights. So, if you don't know, now you know. Now, obviously, this is #not-legal advice, but hopefully you know a little bit more about what isn't the law. And if you're the kind of person that likes to dispel legal myths, or at least lord them over your unassuming friends, you can learn about one more legal myth over at Nebula, because everyone knows you can't yell fire in a crowded theater. Fire! Sometimes legal issues are too hot for YouTube because YouTube's algorithm can be capricious, which is why my creator friends and I teamed up to build our own platform where creators don't need to worry about demonetization or the dreaded algorithm. It's called Nebula, and we're thrilled to be partnering with CuriosityStream, because Nebula is a place where creators can do what they do best, create. It's a place where we can both house our content ad-free and also experiment with original content in new series that probably wouldn't work on YouTube. In fact, if you like this episode, the version that I put up on Nebula removes this ad entirely and replaces it with an extended version that goes into the myth of yelling fire in a crowded theater. And actually, due to popular demand, almost all the videos that I put up on Nebula are both ad-free and have an extended discussion. They're also released early before the YouTube version goes live. Nebula features lots of YouTube's top educational-ish creators. Lindsay Ellis, Thomas Frank, and Charles the Coconut with his sidekick Patrick Willems.
This is Charles, my new friend.
We also get to collaborate in ways that wouldn't work on YouTube, like Tom Scott's amazing game show Money, where he pits a bunch of famous YouTubers against each other in psychological experiments where they can either work together or profit individually. It is ridiculously good. So, what does this have to do with CuriosityStream? Well, as the go-to source for the best documentaries on the internet, they love educational content and educational creators. And we worked out a deal where if you sign up for CuriosityStream with a link in the description, you also get
Let's get some stickers on this bitch.
And to be clear, that Nebula subscription is not a trial. It's free for as long as you're a CuriosityStream member. And for a limited time, CuriosityStream is offering 26% off of their annual plans. That's less than $15 per year for both CuriosityStream and Nebula. And because I'm a lawyer, I made sure that 26% off is, by contract, the best deal you will find anywhere for this bundle. And since we've got to stay inside anyway, I'm sure you'd love watching CuriosityStream's awesome documentaries and watch Tom Scott torture your favorite YouTubers on Nebula. So, if you click the link in the description, you'll get both CuriosityStream and Nebula for 26% off. Or you can go to curiositystream.com/legaleagle. It's a great way to support this channel and educational content directly for just $14.79 per year. Just click on the link in the description or go to curiositystream.com/legaleagle. Clicking on that link really helps out this channel. So, do you agree with my analysis about legal myths? Leave your objections in the comments, and check out this playlist with all of my other irreverent discussions of the law, including crazy stuff that's happening on Reddit, and my real lawyer reactions to a bunch of crazy movies about the law. So, click on this link, and I'll see you in court.
What else did I have queued up?
This video was made possible by CuriosityStream. When you sign up for an annual subscription, you'll also get access to Nebula, the exclusive home to HAI's 40-minute-long special about bricks. The United States and the United Kingdom have a complicated relationship. They used to be united, but then colonial Americans felt derided and decided they'd rather be divided. The UK felt blindsided and cried that being divided was misguided, so their two lopsided armies collided, people died, and in time the United Kingdom abided, and to the states united, independence was provided.
Wow.
In time, tension subsided, and the two decided to become allied, and provided ambassadors who have, in each other's capitals, resided. But recently, the United States has derided the United Kingdom's prided legal system, and thus has been chided. Why did they do it? A reason was provided, but whether it's compelling is undecided. Why did they make the whole intro into rhyme? Unclear, but it was obviously misguided. And they took like noise and air pollution, as well as to raise money for London's public transit system. In economics, this might be called a syntax, which is different from syntax, which is how you order your sentences good, and different from syntax,
Sailor
which is when you
Zombie
charge Sims
Esther.
characters a tariff for
Error
transporting
again.
goods from Sim City to Sim Isle.
Why is my phone cutting out? That's weird. Where did I lose you? It's probably gonna take alcohol to get off. If you can't tell, there's a little bit of silver paint on the top of that. It isn't supposed to be there. Whatever. Are you still there? Am I still streaming? Says I'm live. Okay. I don't know.
A sin when it's waved in honor of the wise men's famous gifts of frankincense, myrrh, and toll exemptions. This, of course, raises the question, but why? Why would London charge people to drive on its roads? That's what roads are for. That would be like charging people for sunshine or fresh air or basic healthcare. And who would do that? The idea is to reduce noise and air pollution, as well as to raise money for London's public transit system. In economics, this might be called a syntax, which is different from syntax, which is how you order your sentences good, and different from sim-tax, which is when you charge Sims characters a tariff for transporting goods from Sim City to Sim Isle, and different from sim-tax, which is what a premium status subscription is called. A sin tax is that the government taxes things it wants to discourage, i.e. sins, thus making it more expensive for people to do or buy those things, and thus reducing consumption of those bad things. This is why countries often tax tobacco and alcohol so heavily. They want people to use them less because it turns out tobacco and alcohol are bad for you. Who knew? Also, governments want money because they're greedy pigs who want to do gross, exorbitant things like provide people healthcare and education. Ugh. Anyways, places like London noticed their streets were way too crowded, making the city too loud, too slow, too smoggy, and far too British. To solve 3 of those 4 problems, they decided to reduce the number of cars on the roads by charging people to drive on them. There are some exemptions to the rule. Cars that meet certain environmental standards can drive free. If you live in or near the area, you get a 90% discount. If you're an NHS patient who is too ill to travel by public transit, you get a refund. And if you're the Queen, technically there's no exemption, but what are they gonna do, sue you? You're the Queen. Your face is literally on the pieces of paper they want from you. But you know who isn't exempted? Foreign diplomats, including US diplomats, except the US diplomats don't really see it that way. To understand why, you have to understand a bit about diplomatic immunity, which is different from democratic disunity, which is what America has now, which is different from plutocratic community, which is what rules America now, which is different from diplostatic rotundity, which are 2 words I just made up. Under the Vienna Convention on Diplomatic Relations of 1961 and the Vienna Convention on Consular Relations of 1963, diplomats are exempted from, among other things, paying taxes. And so, the United States' diplomats refuse to pay the congestion charge as they say it's a tax. London disagrees and says it's not a tax, it's a charge, so they do have to pay, but then the US says, no, and then London says, actually yes, and then the US says, well, actually no, and basically things have gone back and forth that way for years, in what is, as far as I know, the first time that the US and UK have ever gotten into a dispute about taxes, ever. Normally, if someone refuses to pay money they owe the government, whether it's a tax or a charge, they'll be sued or prosecuted. But diplomatic immunity also prevents foreign countries from prosecuting or suing diplomats. For anything. Like, literally anything. A diplomat could murder someone or commit arson or say that Friends is better than Seinfeld, and they couldn't be prosecuted unless the diplomat's home country waived their immunity. It depends a little on who the person
Sailor
is.
Zombie
There are
Esther.
different levels ranging from full
What part
immunity
is
from
that?
civil and criminal charges for top diplomats to immunity from everything
I don't understand the question. What am I stickering? This is a window. Good enough. I'll never be seeing it.
Sailor Zombie Esther. Ah, okay.
except civil charges for top staff, to functional immunity for low-level staff, which only covers crimes committed in the scope of their job. This is part of why diplomats join pigeons as these scourge of cities like New York, DC, and London because they refuse to pay parking tickets and there's not a damn thing you can do to make them pay them. But hey, they're still not as bad as pigeons. Pigeons don't pay parking tickets either, plus they poop on cars. Though technically diplomats could also poop on cars and not get prosecuted. Right now, about 3/4 of embassies pay London's congestion charge, but the remaining quarter that don't, a group led by the US, Japan, Nigeria, Russia, and India, now owe over £100 million, with the US alone at over 12 million, and London just doesn't have a lot of options to force them to cough up the dough. Recently, they've said they want to take it up with the International Court of Justice, which would be a great idea if what the International Court of Justice said actually mattered. Their only real option is to declare diplomats persona non grata and send the diplomats home, but that feels like a pretty extreme move. After all, what's £12 million between friends? £12 million is a lot of money, but you know what isn't? $14.79, which is what it costs to get an annual subscription to both CuriosityStream and Nebula.
Yeah.
You see, CuriosityStream, home to thousands of top
Transitions need
documentaries,
work.
has partnered with Nebula, the streaming service I helped start with a bunch of my YouTuber friends, to offer a bundle deal that gives you access to both sites for the price of one. Not only will you get CuriosityStream's exclusive content from Jane Goodall, Stephen Hawking, and Chris Hadfield, you'll also get to watch Nebula's exclusive content from all your favorite educational YouTubers, including the HI Brick Special and the relaunch of Showmakers, my podcast with Brian from Real Engineering, where we interview other creators. You can sign up for the bundle deal at curiositystream.com/HAI.
Oh, abroad in Japan. Ah, I like him.
よく皆さんわさびをいっぱいつけて食べたりしますけど、わさび今多分30秒ぐらい吸ってますけど、これしかできないんです。大変なんです、わさび。
I just really can't understand that because the subtitles are really small in the corner of the screen, so I'll read that back to you. He says, lots of people are using large amounts of wasabi. I've been grating this wasabi for 30 seconds. And this is all I've got. It's a lot of effort grating wasabi. Please use it wisely. You heard the man, use your wasabi wisely.
A few years ago, when I first moved to the city of Sendai, through a friend I was invited to a party with lots of local business owners, and I felt pretty out of my depth. I was in my 20s at the time, and everyone there was at least 2 or 3 times my age. However, there was one guy who I struck up a conversation with who was in his early 30s, really friendly, unassuming guy who had lived overseas for a short time in a mysterious land known only as Canada. When I asked him what it was that he did, it turned out he was the president and owner of one of the largest sushi businesses in all of North Japan. His name was Satoshi Ueno, and today, after many years of talking about it, we're finally going to go and film inside one of his restaurants and see and hear what it's like to own a sushi business in Japan. With 30 restaurants across Japan and 800 employees, Satoshi Ueno has the daunting task of running his sushi empire, passed on to him by his father just 7 years ago. I've come to hear his story today inside Ueno-san's flagship luxury restaurant, Sushimasa. Together we'll witness every aspect of running the business, from sourcing the finest seafood at an intense market auction, to spending an afternoon with the charismatic and highly skilled head chef of the restaurant, Yuji Yoshikawa. But also share the one thing never to do during your meal. You know what, hopefully by the end of this week I'll know everything I need to set up my own sushi restaurant in London. Filming inside a friend's restaurant, more like industrial espionage. While I've been lucky to dine at Ueno-san's restaurants many times before, I'll admit I've never set foot in his most high-end restaurant, Sushimasa, which is inconspicuously hidden off a bustling street in downtown Sendai. Ascending the grand staircase, I find Ueno-san patiently waiting for me at the entrance.
あー、いらっしゃいませ。はい。
久しぶり。
久しぶり。
Good to see you. Good to see you. 今日本当に時間を
Thank you for your time today.
Okay, thank you very much.
so much for giving me the time today. Okay. We haven't seen each other maybe 3 years?
Yeah.
3 years. So how do I look?
It's old.
It's
maybe
a little bit
muscle.
away. Yeah, muscle. That's what it is. Yeah.
Okay, go ahead. ここが寿司マサです。
This is Sushimasa.
Wow. It's so kind of warm and vibrant. How many people can you have in the counter?
12.
About 12 people?
Yeah.
12 people. And then you've got 2 rooms,
Yes.
private rooms here. I feel like I've stumbled into an art gallery, let alone a restaurant. Ueno-san has carefully selected Suzuri calligraphy ink artwork in immaculate wooden finishings with an interior that feels contemporary, yet steeped in tradition. When it comes to the interior of a sushi restaurant, what's the most important things to look for? What's the most important thing when you're kind of creating it?
Counter is important.
The counter.
Yeah.
This is nice. Often at sushi restaurants, the counter is very big and it's a lot of glass, whereas here the sushi is really beautifully presented and integrated within the counter on the top.
And they're cold. Yes.
Oh, it's cold. Wow. And what about lighting?
Yeah,
the lighting
yeah.
is so good. There's so many different lights highlighting the fish and the chef.
Yeah, this is important too.
Meanwhile, tucked away on the 3rd floor are extra special hidden rooms for guests looking to dine in private. Oh. What kind of customers use these kind of private rooms?
Company owner or also family.
Right.
Yeah.
What do you prefer out of the counter and the private room?
Sushi is counter is better.
Yeah. Good for a family.
Yeah.
Maybe good for a date.
Yeah.
Yeah. Good for a date. But yeah, I think the counter for me is probably better, just because you can watch the chef, right? We've had a great tour, Ueno-san. Thank you for the tour of the restaurant.
Yeah.
I'm very eager to try something. Should we eat some sushi? Should we dive in?
Not yet.
Not yet.
Not yet.
Not yet.
Yeah. The first seafood market.
Seafood market.
You should look
Ah, right. Where you get the fish from? Okay. Should we go now?
now. Tomorrow morning.
Tomorrow morning. What time?
5:30 a.m.
He knew that ahead of time, but he had to be dramatic for the camera. And it's done. He got a claw.
There's nothing quite as intense as coming into a Japanese fish market at 4 a.m. in the morning when everything's kicking off and everyone's buying things and auctions are happening. It's so intense. It's a great way to wake up though, I'll say that much. With 30 restaurants to supply, Ueno-san has an army of buyers around the market, though he still visits weekly to peruse what's on offer.
There we go.
It's arguably the busiest part of the market. The most prized fish, of course, is tuna.
Ahead of
The only
feet.
place I've seen more tuna would have been Tsukiji Fish Market in Tokyo. There's about 100 here, each one costing...
Am I missing a piece? Oh. Forgot to put this back on. The bottom of the foot. There we go. That's more like it. Alright, need to do the hands too. Comes with extra hands for the robot.
Money. Single tuna typically sells for around $10,000. And to make sure it's money well spent, before the morning auctions kick off, buyers carefully select their tuna by examining a section of the tail.
They cut the tail for you so you're able to check the quality of the meat and the fat content. When it comes to sushi, the amount of fat is crucial, as the prices of different cuts are completely different. You can see the fat and that the meat is high quality. Wow. Pull that mask over your nose, buddy.
With one of Ueno-san's top buyers nestled at the back, placing the winning bid on their tuna, it's promptly wheeled off across the market to be cut and prepared for distribution to the restaurants. A single 500-pound tuna can make 10,000 servings, and naturally,
500?
the best cut
Jesus.
today will be enjoyed by the lucky customers at Restaurant Sushimasa, which is me.
Very fresh. 仙台市場に出入りし始めたのは20年以上
Started coming to this market over 20 years ago when my father started the company and he first started buying fish here.
代の時なんですけれども、彼は非常に苦労した。
He faced a lot of hardship.
買う量と
In respect, you need to order in large quantities regularly.
市場の方々の信用を作るので、
That
それ
was
が
a
ない
big ass
時
shrimp.
代はやっぱりす
He
ごく
wasn't doing that at the time.
で、まあ簡単ないじめ
So he was teased and ridiculed.
あったようです。
His father may have been ridiculed back in those early days, but his fortunes couldn't be any more different today as one of the biggest buyers in the market. This morning alone, Ueno-san has spent $20,000 on fish for his chain of restaurants.
Obviously, the fish market is very exciting, very intense, crazy place. How do you feel when you come down here, Ueno-san? You've been coming here many years now. How do you feel when you walk amongst the places and speak to everyone?
やっぱり
I tense up and I get a little nervous.
感じですね。緊張感ありますし。
緊張
Nervous?
緊張感
Yeah,
というか
nervous.
一発勝負。
I've only got one chance because it's an
オークションな
auction.
んで、一回一回が
Every time I come to the market, it's a make or break situation.
僕は結
So
構
for me, it's a rather stressful situation.
背筋が伸びるっていうかね、緊張するっていうか。
How many people do you know in the market? When we were walking through earlier, everybody was saying hello.
もちろん毎日来てた
I used to come here every day,
大体顔見知り
so I
の人
recognize a lot
が
of people.
多いですけど、
Yeah.
挨拶する人は半分ぐらい。
I probably greet about half of them.
It's a lot of people.
じゃあ今日見た魚を
Is it time to go and eat the fish we looked at today?
食べに行こう。
Yes, let's do it.
Sushi.
Let's do it. Let's go.
Yeah.
So hungry.
Yeah.
Nagasaki.
Nagasaki. ほんま。
From Nagasaki, bluefin tuna. That's a big ass
the
cut.
finest, freshest ingredients from the local market. It'd all be completely wasted without a skilled chef. Unfortunately, Ueno-san's right-hand man and head chef Yuji Yoshikawa has dedicated over half his lifetime to honing his craft and preparing sushi for the family business.
わかりますこれ。僕は
Did you get the reference?
板前になったのは、というかこの会社にお世話に
Started
なっ
working here as a sushi chef when I was
16歳
16.
の時なので、明日誕生日なんですね。
Tomorrow's his birthday.
36
He'll be
歳
turning 36.
20年間
So I guess I've been working here for 20 years.
板前になってよく聞かれるの
I
は
don't think
何
it asked how long
年
it takes to learn how to
お寿
prepare
司に入れる
sushi.
ようになるのかとか、まあ人それぞれですけど、やっぱりやる気と根性さえあれば、
If you're determined, it doesn't
まあ
take
ただ
long,
目安と
maybe
しては
2 to
やっぱ
3
り
years.
3年はちゃんとね、しっかりといろいろ基本を教
Just to master the
えて
basics.
いただいて、まあより一層
By
楽
then
し
it
く
starts
で
to
きる
get
のかな
fun.
というふうに思います。やっぱ板前で一
The
番
most
大事
important
な
skill
の
a
は
sushi chef needs
センスだ。
is intuition.
そのセンスっていうのもお客さんを
Intuition to be
満
able to read
足
the
させる
customer.
センス。ただ握りがうまいだけじゃなくて、
It's not just
その
about
お客
making
さん
good
と
sushi, you need to be able to hold a good conversation.
お客さんとのその好みを把握する
And understand the
まあ
customer's
そういう
taste
のが
preferences.
一番すごい人は
If
や
you
っ
do that,
ぱ
you'll become
りす
a
ご
good
い
sushi
板
chef.
前さんになりますからね。お客さんにどこをおすすめかって聞かれると、
When customers ask for
生マグロなんで
recommendation, I always suggest the best part of the
この
tuna,
大トロ
fatty tuna.
ここはおすすめします。で今大トロをちょっと
Let me cut some for you. Aw, for
油乗っ
me,
てるからこう光るんですね。
the fatty, the oil makes my fingers glisten.
僕個人としては
As much as I like a fatty tuna,
まあ
his
大トロ
favorite
もも
part
ちろん美味しいんで
is
すけど、
the medium
この
fatty
中トロ
tuna.
この中トロの部分がまあ赤身と
It's got a balance of lean meat and tuna, medium fatty tuna, and medium fatty
すごくマグロ
tuna.
の味が濃
It's
厚
a
な
very flavorful part of the tuna, which
個
is
人
why
的
I
には
like
好
it.
きです。やっぱ寿司を握ってる時にやっぱり
Most
一
important
番
thing I look for when
気
preparing
にしてる
sushi
っていうのは、まあ、シャリの
is
温
the
度
temperature of the
帯
rice,
とシャリの
as well as the size and firmness of the
硬さ
rice.
あとわさびの量。た
And then
だ
wasabi.
同じシャリの大きさで全部握ったんではダメなんですね。ものによってネタのもの大きさによってシャリの大きさも変えたり、ものによって柔らかさを変えたり、もの大きさによってシャリの大きさ
Fuck this, I'm not reading all this. Deal with it. Oh wait, wrong one. And no, it's not frozen. There.
さも変えたり、ものによって柔らかさを変えたり、ネタと、シャリが口の中でほぐれた時にちょうどバランスよくなくなるっていうのが理想なんです。なので、硬さはかなり大事にしてますね。生わさび、生わさびは茎の方はすらないで、基本的にはこれは醤油漬けとかいろいろするんですけど、ここをこう鉛筆のように削ります。でここからこの先っぽの方からおろしていきます。よく皆さんわさびをいっぱいつけて食べたりしますけど、わさび今多分30秒ぐらい吸ってますけど、これしかできないんです大変なんです、わさび使うのは。皆さん大事にわさびを食べてください。チューブとかのわさびが、使われてるところも多いと思うんですけど、この生わさびと何が違うかって言ったら、やっぱり添加物がこっちは一切入ってないので、向こうはいろいろ砂糖とか化学調味料とかね、そういうのも添加されてるんで、そこがやっぱ大きい違いと、あと香りじゃないですかね、フレッシュ感は、チューブのわさびとは全然違いますね。
With all the skill and craftsmanship that's gone into preparing the immaculate plate of sushi, from a customer perspective, it can be a little bit intimidating not to screw things up at the final hurdle. Thankfully though, according to Yoshikawa-san, there's only one thing that rubs him the wrong way, and it's easily avoided.
お寿司屋さんに来たら、やってはいけないことが一つだけあります。板前さんが愛情を込めて握ったお寿司を出した時に、そのネタをペローンと剥がして、それに醤油をつけて戻して食べるっていうのは NG です。握ってる意味がないです。やっぱその一貫でも物語があって、シャリの硬さだったり、わさびの量だったり、シャリの大きさだったり、ネタの大きさ、いろいろな温度帯もありますし、いろんなことが一つになって一貫ができてるわけなんですね。それをネタだけ取ったら物語を潰してるみたいなもんなので、これはやらないでいただきたいと思います。それ以外だったら特にあんまり NG はないと思います。美味しく食べてもらえればいいと思います。箸で食べようが手で食べようが、好きなものを好きなだけ食べればいいと思います。
Yoshikawa-san has handed me this beautifully prepared assortment of tuna, freshly brushed with soy sauce and glistening in the light. And away we go. I'm going to start with akami, the most flavourful one. Oh wow! Oh bloody hell, that's good. So good, honestly. It's all about that balance of flavours, right? Everything has got to be right, and that is just absolutely perfect. The vinegar in the rice, the wasabi underneath the fish. And of course the fish itself, the star of the show, so juicy and flavourful. And then chutoro. Oh bloody hell. Alright, I think chutoro is my favourite. Because it is quite fatty, it does have that melt in your mouth kind of sensation. The trouble with having something that is so good, that is so perfect, is going back to anything else feels like a crime. And this is certainly going to make dining out at other sushi restaurants a whole lot more difficult going forward. So bloody good.
After poor old Yoshikawa-san has watched me stuff myself with his carefully prepared tuna, we're joined once again by Ueno-san, who opens up about the pressures of running a large family business from such a young age, almost unheard of in Japanese culture, where the average age of a company president is 59 years old.
Jesus.
I think the most impressive thing for me, Ueno-san, is you're 38 now?
Now 38.
But you're the shacho, you're the president of a massive company, 30 restaurants. In Japan, that's pretty rare, right? To have someone who's young, someone who's under 40.
Hiden Naruto has entered the chat.
I became president when I was 31 years.
31. I'm 30, so one more year.
Yeah. So
that's a lot of responsibility.
But my father say, you're young, but still I'm young. He said. So if I old, my planning, thinking is
Oh, we got
also
our alternate hands.
Right, yeah, yeah.
or hard.
Not innovative, maybe.
Yeah. No, in fact, last year he retired.
He completely retired.
Yeah.
Lucky man.
Lucky man.
How old is your father?
60, almost 4.
64.
Yeah.
Wow. What's been the most difficult thing for you as the leader, as the shacho? What's the most difficult thing?
I don't say employer. I don't say. I want to like a friend
To your staff.
スタッフの信頼を得ることが大変。
Building trust with the staff.
Building
trust with the staff.
With staff, yes. It's most important.
It's most important and very difficult. It takes a lot of time, I imagine.
When I start president, the first I talking with staff. Every staff.
Everyone. How many staff?
800.
800 staff. Everyone.
3 years or
It took 3 years.
Yeah. Then I thinking, what is president? What is president working on? Really thinking.
President, I guess, having a goal or a dream, like having a vision for the business.
And Ueno-san certainly has vision. In recent years, the company has been planting trees along Tohoku's tsunami-affected coastline, albeit not necessarily for the environmental reasons you might think.
じゃあクリスは遠くの海と近くの海、取れる魚はどっちが多いと密度があると思います。
難しいな。
Gonna let this video finish and I'll start a new stream.
Yes.
Like the sea close to the.
Yeah. 海藻とか貝類も、あらゆる魚は陸の近くに生息しています。でそれは餌が豊富だから。でその餌が豊富な理由は実は森から栄養素が来てると。だから森がダメになったら海がダメになる。
Very interesting. Yeah, I'd never thought about that.
これから人間社会はどんどん進歩していきますけど、自然を少しずつ残しながらバランスを持って、やっていかないとこの寿司っていう美味しいお寿司も食べれなくなっちゃうと。
I'm so grateful to Ueno-san for letting us come in here to film, for dragging me around the market, an incredible experience. The food, the atmosphere, it's just such an amazing restaurant, Sushimasa. And to hear what it's like to own a restaurant has been just such an amazing experience. Everything about this restaurant is a 10 out of 10. And if you ever find yourself in Sendai, I highly recommend coming to Sushimasa. It'll be an experience that you will never, ever forget. Well, it's been an amazing 2 days, Ueno-san. Thank you so much for showing us around your restaurant, showing us how the whole business operates. I think I've learned so much about the industry.
Thank you very much, too.
Thank you so much.
See you.
And now I will open my sushi restaurant in London. London.
Never.
No?
Never.
No? Oh.
Take care.
Alright.
I'll be back in about, I don't know, 5 minutes for Budu Sura.